Before we dive in, viewer discretion is advised. This content is for entertainment.
What unfolds when a titan of Hollywood, a man synonymous with integrity, walks into the lion's den, believing it to be a simple conversation, only to find the jaws of a premeditated narrative waiting to snap shut? You are about to bear witness to a moment that seared itself into the annals of daytime television. A confrontation so raw, so charged, that Kevin Costner's legendary stoicism was finally shattered under the weight of a relentless onslaught. This was no mere interview gone awry. This was a chilling masterclass in the art of the televised takedown, a stark demonstration of how a promotional tour can be twisted into a public crucifixion. Brace yourselves, and let us know your thoughts below, because the anatomy of this implosion is something to behold. For Kevin Costner, the morning began under the guise of normalcy, another day on the promotional circuit. He was riding a wave of critical acclaim from his latest cinematic offering. He strode into the studios of The View, prepared for the familiar, gentle volley of questions about his storied career and future projects. This was a veteran of the game, a man celebrated for his unflappable poise. As he took his seat opposite the panel, the stage was set. Yet, the moment the cameras blinked to life, the very air in the room seemed to curdle. "So, Kevin, welcome back to The View," Whoopi began, her tone laced with a distinct predatory edge that any seasoned observer would instantly recognize. "I must admit, I'm intrigued by some of your recent declarations concerning the present condition of Hollywood and where the industry is headed." Costner shifted, a minute adjustment in a sea of composure. He held fast to his professional smile. "Well, Whoopi, it's my belief that Hollywood is in a constant state of flux. My compass has always been aimed at crafting powerful stories that connect with the heart of an audience. But that's a sanitized version of your statement, isn't it?" Whoopi interjected, lunging forward, a sheaf of papers brandished like a weapon. "Because according to numerous interviews you've granted as of late, you seem to harbor some rather pointed beliefs about which narratives deserve to be told. And more importantly, by whom." A current of tension arced between the other hosts. Their exchanged glances confirmed the atmosphere was now electric and dangerous. Just out of frame, a silent drama played out. Costner's publicist, a portrait of mounting dread, could only watch as Whoopi pressed her calculated assault. "I believe there may be a fundamental misunderstanding of my intended message," Costner replied, his voice a study in control, yet threaded with a note of genuine confusion. "Could you perhaps clarify which of my comments you are referencing?" Whoopi made a grand show of rustling her documents. "Oh, I have a feeling you know precisely what I'm alluding to, but allow me to jog your memory." She locked eyes with him. "You stated, and this is a direct quote, that Hollywood has lost its way and must return to creating films for real Americans. Would you care to elaborate on what you define as real Americans?" A muscle in Costner's jaw went taut, a nearly invisible signal of the storm brewing within. "I never uttered those specific words, Whoopi. My sentiment was that I am dedicated to creating films that explore the universal human condition, narratives that unite us rather than tear us apart." "But you see," she retorted, "that is the very heart of the issue." Whoopi fired back, her volume escalating. "When figures like yourself speak of uniting people and making films for real Americans, the unspoken message is that the stories we have been fighting to tell, stories centered on people who share my likeness, stories from the fringes of society, are somehow less than real, or fall short of being truly American." "That is a complete and utter distortion of my words," Costner countered. The impeccable armor of his professional demeanor was beginning to show fractures. "And frankly, I am taken aback by the combative nature of this discussion. I came here to speak about my craft, not to be cornered, misconstrued, and maligned." A nervous murmur rippled through the studio audience as Whoopi remained undeterred. "Maligned? Kevin? I am posing legitimate questions to you based on your own public pronouncements. If you are unable to withstand scrutiny for words you yourself have spoken, then perhaps you ought to reconsider making such statements to begin with." "The issue," Kevin stated, his voice now forged in steel, "is that those are not my words. You are contorting my words to serve a narrative you walked in here with," he stated, his voice ablade. "That is not journalism. It's activism in a poor disguise." Around them, the other hosts began to shift, sensing the ground giving way beneath them, but it was too late. The interview was already a runaway train, and Whoopi wasn't just a passenger. She was conducting it. "So that's it? I'm not a real journalist now?" she countered. "Because I'm asking you difficult questions, instead of just fluffing the pillows for your little movie?" Kevin leaned back, a universe of frustration warring behind his eyes as he fought for composure. "Look," he began, his voice heavy with experience. "I've been in this industry for over 4 decades. I have sat through thousands of these interviews, and in all that time, I have never been subjected to this degree of intentional mischaracterization. You're not here for a conversation," he declared. "You are here for a confrontation. The only confrontation in this room is your glaring refusal to stand by what you said." Whoopi shot back, the point of no return now a distant memory. "You made those comments, Kevin. You cannot simply appear here and pretend they don't exist, because they're met with resistance." "Then show me exactly where I said those words," Kevin demanded, his voice now simmering with a palpable heat. "Show me the direct quote where I mentioned real Americans, or suggested marginalized communities, were somehow not real. Because I can assure you, you cannot. I never said it." Whoopi brandished her papers again. "I have it right here." "Kevin. Multiple sources, multiple interviews." "Then read it," Kevin challenged, locking his eyes on her. "Read the exact quote, word for word. Stop paraphrasing and inserting your own meaning into my mouth." The very air in the studio seemed to crystallize, stretched to a breaking point. A hush fell as Whoopi rifled through her notes, the hunt for the so-called smoking gun growing more desperate by the second. Her co-hosts looked on, their expressions a painting of pure dread, as they witnessed their colleague's gambit spectacularly collapse. "I shouldn't have to read your own words back to you," Whoopi finally deflected, her tone shifting to a brittle defensiveness. "You know what you said, and more importantly, you know what you meant by it." "No," Kevin replied, his voice now edged with cold, unmistakable anger. "I think you absolutely do need to read those words. Because what is occurring right now is a deliberate assassination of my character, founded on hearsay and twisted versions of my statements, ripped entirely out of their context." The safe harbor of a commercial break was a prayer on the producer's lips as they scrambled to salvage what began as a routine promotional spot. But the bell had not yet rung. Kevin Costner was not finished, and neither was Whoopi Goldberg. The real battle was just beginning. When the broadcast resumed, the studio atmosphere was no longer tense. It was a live wire, humming with hostility. Kevin Costner sat bolted to his chair, a monument of defiance. His legendary composure had been burned away, leaving behind a raw, barely restrained frustration. Whoopi Goldberg, realizing her ambush had backfired, doubled down, preparing an even fiercer assault. "We're back with Kevin Costner," Whoopi announced, her voice a veneer of forced cheerfulness for the nationwide audience. "And we were just engaged in a spirited discussion about some of his recent public statements." "A spirited discussion?" Kevin interjected, cutting through the pleasantries. "Is that the new term for willful misrepresentation? Because I believe your viewers should be aware that you're accusing me of things I have never uttered. And when I demand you produce these so-called quotes, you are unable to do so." For an infinitesimal moment, Whoopi's on-air smile cracked, a fissure in the mask, before she sealed it shut. "Kevin, I do not appreciate being labeled a liar on my own program, nor do I appreciate being defamed on national television." "Defamed?" Kevin retorted, his voice climbing. "You lured me here under a complete false pretense. This was supposed to be a conversation about my new film, not a gotcha spectacle based on imaginary quotes." Joy Behar made a desperate attempt to seize the controls. "Maybe we should talk about the new movie." "No." But Whoopi, sensing a tactical retreat, cut him off with surgical precision. "I believe it is vital we dissect this right now. Kevin, you're radiating defensiveness over statements that, if merely taken out of context as you insist, should be simple to untangle." Kevin leaned into the storm, his gaze fixed on Whoopi, a challenger meeting the champion's stare. "I'm defensive because this is a masterclass in sensationalism. You're fabricating a reality, a storyline that doesn't exist, and then demanding I justify myself against your own creation. That is not the path of honest journalism. But perhaps that's a world you're unfamiliar with." And with that, a tremor went through the audience. A collective gasp at the sheer audacity of Kevin's challenge to a titan of the industry. A shadow fell across Whoopi's face, The moment of impact had arrived. Her guest had just, on her own stage, questioned the very foundation of her credibility. "Excuse me." Whoopi's voice lowered, a whisper that carried more weight than a shout. "Are you implying I am ignorant of my own profession?" "I am implying," Kevin returned, his tone chillingly level, "that what is occurring at this moment is not journalism. It is a character assassination, veiled as an interview. You brought me into this arena to discuss a film, and then, without warning, you launched an offensive based on quotes you seemingly cannot even present. What name would you give that?" With a sudden jolt, Whoopi rose to her feet, her notes scattering like fallen leaves in a tempest. "I call it demanding accountability for one's words and deeds. A concept that seems foreign within your rarefied, privileged world." "My privileged world?" Kevin's voice fractured, disbelief and fury warring within him. "Whoopi, my story began in a working-class family in California. Every single thing I possess was forged through decades of relentless effort. Do not presume to lecture me on privilege from your throne, armed with accusations you cannot substantiate. Facts?" A bitter, incredulous laugh escaped Whoopi's lips. "The fact is, you uttered those words, and now you're desperately trying to rewrite history because the world is holding you to them. The undeniable fact is that you are a symbol of everything stagnant and wrong with this business. The old regime, desperate to keep the world exactly as it has always been." In a mirror motion, Kevin also stood, his 6-foot stature instantly commanding the space between them. "The only thing I represent is an artist who entered this studio in good faith, only to walk directly into a perfectly laid ambush. And the only old regime I see is the one that believes you can tear down a person's name with nothing but shadows and twisted truths. Tear down your reputation?" Whoopi scoffed, the sound dripping with dismissiveness. "Kevin, your reputation is perfectly safe. You are a wealthy, powerful man in Hollywood. Your reputation is bulletproof." And there it was. Kevin's voice became unnervingly quiet, a calm descending in the eye of the hurricane. The true agenda finally reveals itself. This was never about anything I might have said. This has always been about who I am and where I come from. You've predetermined my guilt based on my race and my gender, and you're merely torturing the evidence to fit that verdict. Panic flickered in the eyes of the other hosts as the dialogue plunged into profoundly treacherous waters. Tsunami host made a desperate bid to seize the controls. "Perhaps we should." "No," Kevin cut in, his voice resonating with newfound power. "I believe we must let this unfold. Because what is transpiring here is a perfect illustration of the prejudice and the snap judgments that are poisoning the very soul of this nation. Whoopi has already convicted me in her mind, based on nothing more than my appearance, and she is wielding this immense platform to punish me for transgressions I never committed." Whoopi's face was a mask of crimson fury. "Do not you dare attempt to reverse this and cast yourself as the martyr here. Do not you dare suggest that you are the one facing prejudice." "I'm not suggesting anything," Kevin countered. "I am simply stating the facts of what has occurred. You lured me here under a false flag. You have leveled accusations against me with no proof, and when I meet your challenge, you pivot to attacking my very character, based on your own assumptions about my life and what I believe. If that does not fit the definition of prejudice, what would you call it?" "I would call it accountability," Whoopi fired back, her voice sharp as glass. "Something your world has evaded for entirely too long." Kevin could only shake his head, a slow, mournful gesture. "That's not accountability, Whoopi. True accountability would be the scroll of evidence, the actual words you allege I spoke. It would be the confession that this was a trap, sprung from the very start. Accountability would be admitting you've squandered precious moments from every soul watching, all for this charade. Performance?" The word shot from Whoopi's lips, a sharp, new octave of disbelief. "You dare call this a performance?" She seethed. "The only performance here," Kevin countered, his voice ablade, "has been this entire, staged spectacle. A meticulously crafted play, designed to ignite a fire where there wasn't even smoke. And the true tragedy? It's that the people watching, your loyal audience, they merit truth, not this theatrical deceit." The air in the studio grew thick, suffocating. Off stage, the puppet masters were in a silent panic, their hands gesturing wildly. But the two titans were locked in a collision course, deaf to the warnings. "You want to know my truth?" Whoopi hissed, every syllable coated in pure disdain. I think you walked onto this stage anticipating a coronation. The gentle lobs you're so accustomed to. I think the shock is that someone finally dared to throw a fastball. His retort was a disbelieving echo. Real questions? A laugh escaped Kevin, but it was a shard of glass, devoid of warmth. Whoopi, you haven't posed one legitimate inquiry. You have only hurled allegations. You have warped reality. You have waged a war against my very name. Not once have you asked about the substance of my life's work, or the principles I stand for. The familiar, jaunty tune of the commercial break began its ascent, a hollow attempt to cut the tension. But Kevin's fire was not yet extinguished. His voice sliced through the manufactured cheer of the theme song, the red lights of the cameras still glowing like defiant eyes. No, Kevin commanded, his voice a clarion call over the chaos. Forget the break. I believe the people watching have earned the right to see where this path leads. Whoopi, for the first time, seemed knocked off her axis, stunned by his refusal to adhere to the script of televised combat. She jabbed a finger toward the lenses, a queen reclaiming her throne. So be it. We end this now. Excellent, Kevin affirmed, closing the distance between them. His movement deliberate. Because the world needs to bear witness to what you've done in this room. You brought me into your arena under the false flag of professional discourse. But instead, you set a snare, baited with phantom words and assaults on my integrity. And the moment I exposed the deception, you showed your hand. Your true agenda was laid bare. My agenda? Whoopi's laugh was a bitter mockery. And what would that be? Your purpose, he stated, the words heavy with conviction, is to demolish any voice that does not sing your prescribed tune. Kevin's voice was now an avalanche, carrying the weight of 40 years of pent-up rage against the gears of media manipulation. You cast me as the villain before I ever crossed your threshold, and you engineered this entire spectacle to fit that pre-written narrative. That, Whoopi, is not the pursuit of truth. It is the craft of propaganda. A stunned paralysis fell over the other hosts. Whoopi's face twisted into a mask of fury. Propaganda? How dare you speak that word? How dare I speak the truth? Kevin cut her off, his voice rising. How dare I illuminate how you've spent the last 20 minutes, attempting to dismantle a man's reputation, armed with ghosts of quotes you cannot conjure, and beliefs you cannot prove. You want a portrait of propaganda? It is the very interview we are living through right now. The sound of Whoopi's palm striking the desk cracked through the studio like a gunshot. I will not be preached to by some washed-up performer who believes his voice is divine. A has been. The words fell from Kevin's lips, not with a roar, but with the chilling quiet of a sudden frost. In that moment, the tectonic plates of the conflict shifted beneath them. A has been actor. He repeated the epitaph. Is that the sum total of 4 decades? Of a life spent weaving stories of substance? Of a foundation built on dedication and honor? Kevin, perhaps it's time, Sarah Haynes began, her voice a fragile plea. But Kevin raised a hand, a gesture that was both a shield and a command, halting her intervention mid-sentence. No, he said, his gaze locked onto Whoopi, a predator refusing to break eye contact with its prey. Let the lady have her final word. I implore you, continue. I wait with bated breath to hear more about my supposed irrelevant career, my meaningless contributions to an industry you hold in such obvious contempt. In that moment, Whoopi knew she had overstepped, yet pride forbade any retreat. I do not hold contempt for the industry. What I hold in contempt is the sheer hubris of individuals who believe they can speak without answering for the fallout. The fallout? Kevin's voice cracked. The legendary iron composure he was known for, finally shattering into a million pieces. What fallout? For what words? You have yet to present a single, solitary quote to substantiate your claims. You have constructed this entire theater of accusation from whispers and shadows, and when I demand proof, you label me arrogant. A chilling silence descended upon the studio, so profound that Kevin's words seemed to ricochet off the very walls. The crew, seasoned professionals, froze in their tracks, their eyes locked on the unprecedented implosion unfolding before them. Would you like to know what true arrogance is, Whoopi? Kevin pressed on, his voice trembling now, not with fear, but with a fury barely contained. Arrogance is believing you can assassinate a person's character on national television, armed with nothing but empty air. Arrogance is the presumption of knowing a man's heart based on the color of his skin, and his gender. Arrogance is leveraging your considerable platform to propagate falsehoods, then feigning insult when you are held to account. Whoopi rose from her chair once more, her own voice climbing to a near scream. I am not propagating falsehoods. I am demanding accountability for what you have said. What I have said? Kevin bellowed, the last thread of his control snapping. Then show me the words. Produce the quote that validates any part of this witch hunt. The time has come to present your evidence, or cease your attack. A collective gasp swept through the live audience as the sheer force of Kevin's challenge reverberated through the studio. Figures in security uniforms began to shift, closing the distance to the stage as the atmosphere turned volatile. Do not dare command me to be silent on my own stage, Whoopi shrieked in reply. This is my domain. You are merely a guest within it. Then perhaps you should behave as a host, and not as a character assassin, Kevin retorted instantly. A true host engages with questions rooted in fact, not ambushing their guests with manufactured controversies. Joy Behar made a valiant, yet futile, attempt to quell the inferno. Let's all just pause for a moment. No, Kevin pivoted, his gaze sweeping across the entire panel, indicting them all. I am finished pausing. While my career and my name are used as sport by people like her, I am finished legitimizing this circus as acceptable discourse from someone who dares to call herself a journalist. Whoopi's voice fractured with emotion as she yelled back, You believe you are superior to me? You believe that because you are Kevin Costner, you are beyond reproach? Beyond questioning? I believe I am superior to a purveyor of untruths, Kevin answered, his rage suddenly crystallizing into a devastating, ice-cold calm. I believe I am superior to one who finds more satisfaction in destruction than in creation, who would rather demolish than build. And yes, Whoopi, I believe I am superior to someone who would shamelessly misuse their platform to spread deceit and have the audacity to label it journalism. The words hung in the studio air, heavy and irrevocable as a judge's final sentence. Whoopi's mouth fell open, then closed, forming no sound as her mind struggled to grasp the sheer weight of his condemnation. Remove him from my stage, Whoopi finally managed, a mere whisper to the security team. Her voice was now a ghost of its former power. Kevin calmly straightened his jacket, his eyes finding the lens of the main camera. Ladies and gentlemen, you have just been given a front row seat to what this program considers journalism. I leave you to form your own judgments. As the security detail moved toward him, Kevin raised his hands in a gesture of peace. I can find my own way out. Unlike some, I recognize when my presence is no longer welcome. He turned to face Whoopi one last time. For whatever it is worth, I came here today with the hope of engaging in a substantive discussion on matters of consequence. What I received instead was a masterclass in the art of demolishing credibility and incinerating professional bridges. My compliments on your work. You have achieved a stunning success on both fronts. And with that final, cutting pronouncement, Kevin Costner turned and walked off the set of The View, leaving in his wake a tableau of stunned silence and a host whose public image had just sustained a blow from which it would never truly recover. And as the signal died and the network scrambled for a break, one truth echoed in the sudden silence. This wasn't merely a flawed interview. This was the reckoning. The exact moment a Hollywood legend finally gave voice to what millions had whispered for years. So, in the aftermath of Kevin Costner's fiery stand against Whoopi Goldberg, a verdict must be reached. Did the man go too far? Or was this a correction that was tragically overdue? Cast your judgment in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for more of the raw, seismic confrontations the establishment prays you'll never witness. Which other titans do you want to see us examine at their breaking point?